if you have any questions that you want to tweet, that's our Twitter address. And so for the folks watching live, please tweet your questions right here at Dell Innovators. For those of you in the room, please feel free to interact with us as much as possible. It obviously makes this go a lot faster, and it makes for some great conversations. So highly encouraged to just ask questions and be as open as you want. My name is Matt Cowart. I work with Dell. I have been here for about 10 years or so. I work on the best team at Dell. That's the Center for Entrepreneurs. And my teammates are actually in the room today, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Start over here with Blake.
Blake Menefee. Relevant to what we're talking about today, I have about 10 years experience selling into large enterprise. I work very closely with Dell Ventures as well as the office of the CTO, looking for new technologies for Dell.
We got Jason in the back.
Jason St. Peter, also with the Center for Entrepreneurs, do a lot of the business development work and interact with a lot of our end user customers just to make sure that Dell is bringing everything we can to the table to help entrepreneurs succeed. So, like Blake, I have a ton of experience in selling to enterprises and listening to startups pitch to Dell. So, this is something that Matt and Blake will be awesome at. So, looking forward to it.
Thank you. And then, of course, we have our marketing team over here, Allison and Brittany. So, what are we here for today? We basically wanted to provide a way to tell you guys about our experience actually selling into large enterprises. As you heard, we've all had about 10 years or so. So between the three of us, there's about 30 years of experience trying to do one of the hardest things there is to do when you're a startup, and that's land a big client and, of course, provide value and articulate it and go through the long process that can take some time. So hopefully, what we have to share with you guys is relevant and helpful, and if not, please feel free to tell us because we're always trying to update this and make it more relevant as we go forward. So before we jump into the specific topic today, we just want to give a little bit of an overview about what the Dell Center for Entrepreneurs is actually all about. So these are some pillars that we came up with to kind of group all of these things that we do into, but the easiest way to articulate it is we just take everything that Dell does already all across the globe and try to repackage it in a way that we find is relevant and more accessible for the startup and entrepreneur community. And the purpose of that is we want to do whatever we can to help you accelerate your business, bring your product to market, network, find capital, and ultimately grow as quickly and as easily as possible. So anything that you want to chat with us about, we're happy to discuss. So I'm going to turn it over to Blake now, and we're going to get right into the topic.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so as we started thinking about this, I didn't really want to show you a sales model, right? You can Google sales models, learn all that stuff online. What we really wanted to show you was our personal experience, right? We have a lot of startups every single day coming to us saying, hey, I want to land a deal with Dell, right? So what does that really look like? And so what we're going to talk about today, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the ADA model, so attention, interest, desire, then action. We're going to kind of walk through it, but think of it as a guide. It's just a guide. We're going to walk through some things around some certain relevant points. So before I get started, I'm going to pick on you, Eric, actually. So Eric, you've got a great company, great product, great platform. Throw me your value proposition.
What's our value proposition?
Yeah.
We allow companies to stay in compliance, and we allow any gaps in communication to be quickly identified during the process of onboarding new employees. So that way, there's no time for them to spin their wheels, and they can be productive in a more effective manner.
So what?
So what?
Yeah, so what?
So what is that you have these employees who come on and they have an offer and they have certain expectations that need to be met. And they have certain things that disappoint them if they don't have a computer, if they don't get all the files that they need. It prevents them from actively being able to contribute to the company, and that loses company dollars.
Okay. Well, who cares?
The company, because they like dollars.
So I love that. I love that exercise because those are like really the key pillars of your value proposition, right? And I don't mean to pick on you, but I like to ask that a lot because we see a lot of pitches actually for Dell that people can't really do this. They get through the first so what, it sounds great. They get through kind of the second one, but it's really trying to help define it. So the very first so what is obviously, is this really a problem? Obviously you have a great company, yes it is a problem. The second one is really, is it a problem for me? Or is it a problem for my stakeholders? Obviously, great company, yes, great platform. And then the very last thing is who cares? So who's the guy that you're gonna have to separate money to? You're gonna have to have a very strong value proposition to have someone actually give you a six-figure deal through an enterprise customer. So I'd highly recommend do this exercise. I do it all the time with startups. It's a great exercise for pitches, but just keep asking yourself over and over and over again. And also saying at the same time, this is going to change for what companies you're going to try to sell into, right? So company X is going to be different from company Y. So before you walk in and do that pitch, think about, who are those key stakeholders? What does this really look like for this company? So, all right. So one thing I do want to mention is on the attention phase. Attention and interest is really relevant to how hard can you hustle, right? So when I think about hustle, Eric, how often do you get out of the office? I mean, what's the percentage? Like
Every day.
every day, like 70-30, or
How often am I in?
In the office.
Depends. I mean, I would say that I'm probably in the office 50% of the time, out of the office.
so that's actually perfect. So most responses is I sit behind my computer, get your butt out of the chair. You can't do this behind the screen. Go figure out where these people are. So where are your customers? Better question is where are your customers' customers, right? So pick on you for a second. Where are your customers' customers?
Customers are anywhere in the oil industry.
Anywhere in the oil industry. Where do these guys hang out?
We'll hang out at, say, engineers events for the petroleum engineers.
There you go. So the idea is you're going to pull yourself into their world, right? Because your customer doesn't care. You don't care about them. You care about what they care about. What are their priorities? What are they thinking every day? Pull yourself into their world and really think about what's important to them. So as we kind of move through interests, one kind of caveat I see a lot is a lot of great companies come through Dell, but it's one of those things that you're trying to replace sometimes systems that have been around for 30 years, right? Large investments have been made in the past, and now we're trying to replace this with a newer technology. So ask yourself, is this a nice to have for them, or is this a need to have? What's really driving this change through the process? And like I said before, speak their language, pull yourself into their world, and then, do you really understand their priorities? I had a situation one time where I was working with a startup, great startup. It's about $20 million opportunity, even just for Dell alone, right? 6-figure deal for them, $20 million opportunity for us. And I'm just banging down the door on this VP, right? Months and months go by. I continue trying to push this through and sat down with him. He said, Blake, appreciate all the enthusiasm. I know it's a great opportunity, but let me show you my priority list. 240, 120, 120, 100 million. I fell about midway down the stack. Now what we did at that point is we changed our value proposition and we also changed our stakeholders. So we went back to the business, looked for who was going to have the highest impact, and really actually pitched that to them, and we got that deal done. So do you really truly understand the impact and business ROI? Whenever you're talking with a large enterprise customer, it's really nice to have to be able to kind of, trying to think of a way, articulate some sort of ROI in your value proposition. So for you, 20% better efficiency, 10x return for you. It rings true. These guys go fast. It's hard. They have a lot on their plate. So if you can get them to pique their interest, it's something that they're going to remember. So as we kind of move through the desire and action phase, this is really where you're going to have to really demonstrate value. And we're going to talk about this here in just a moment, but this is kind of my favorite part. Which is the enterprise chasm of death, right? So how can people really push this thing to action? So how do you demonstrate the need for change? We just talked about that, right? Is this something that you're truly innovating, or are you actually just bettering a process today? If you're just bettering a process, you better think about how can I really make an impact and ROI back to the business. And if this is a revolutionary, disruptive technology, you're also going to be dealing with some I try to say older minds that think that this is the way we do business every day. So you're going to have to really try to find those key stakeholders to influence that change. So what companies drive the decision? Think factors. Okay. So who's actually? So let's talk about this for a second. So when you're in a meeting with a VP, and actually let me ask you that: what's the best way to sell into an enterprise customer? Sell up or sell around?
I'm gonna go for this. Just try and make a good relationship.
God, he's so good. He's so good. So, whenever you're looking for this person, you're really trying to find that person in the organization that needs your product like they need air, right? And that's really the sell up approach. So that might be frontline users. You try to champion, work your way up through middle management to that executive, You pull that product out, people freak out. That's a great approach. The only thing I'd be conscious of, that's a really, really long sales cycle. I mean, those things take sometimes even a year to a year and a half to actually push through. So the sell around approach, you have to be very, very careful with the sell around approach. So what I mean by that is you don't go straight to the decision maker. You're looking for that influencer that can influence that decision maker, right? Because you don't want to go around middle management. People won't get bought into the process or the platform that you're selling. And one thing I've always seen in these meetings is you have this VP sitting there. You've got this guy that's taking notes. This guy doesn't say much, but when he does say something, people listen, right? That's your guy. That's the guy that you want to influence. Then also look for regulatory triggers. So it might be something in healthcare. Leadership changes are huge. So let's think about that for a second. Leadership change. Got a guy who's been there for 15 years. Now he's moving out. Is he really going to make one big changes in his organization right off the bat? Probably not, right? He's going to not want to rock the boat. He's going to want to make small incremental changes as he moves through the process and innovates through the company. So be conscious of it, because you don't want to throw this big idea at him right up front, because this is never going to go anywhere, right? Think about a proof of concept that you could get in there, make small changes to the organization that organically grows throughout that enterprise customer. And this is my favorite, and I do not know why deals get killed right here in chasm of death. So I see a lot of startups that have great IP, great platforms, they do a great job pitching, moving through the organization, but they get stuck right there at the end. They get stuck when they're trying to sign that PO. So, value plus scarcity and urgency equals action. I think that's pretty relevant, but here's some of the common pitfalls to avoid. Looking and acting small. I've walked into meetings before with 3 to 5 man shops, and I swore to you, these guys had 500 employees. They look like a G500, they act like a G500, and I walk out, do my research on them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like 3 guys in a garage, right? But you gotta practice. You're not Allen Iverson, you gotta practice. You have to practice that pitch. So be polished and crisp, act like a Fortune 500 customer. And this is another huge one, especially if you're selling a SaaS-based model, something in the enterprise customer, ability to scale, right? So, you think about Dell just in general, there's 100,000 employees at Dell. So maybe you've done a proof of concept in the past with a medium-sized customer, right? But if I have to roll this thing out to 100,000 users, my job's on the line, my people are on the line, I have to feel confident, be able to demonstrate that scale. So how do you do it? Find great partners that will do that for you. So Dell also has 15 solution centers across the US that we will do proof of concepts to help startup companies show that economy of scale. And then this is also big, reference customers. All the time I hear, hey, I'm working with X company. Well, great, can I talk to them? No, they won't talk to you. I'm like, well, wait, hold on a second. Like I need to feel confident that you're working with some other large institutions. Work that into your deal flow. Say it up front. It has to be part of your conversation right up front. Hey, as we go through this proof of concept, as you guys start to sell these contracts or sign these contracts, will you please be a reference customer for us? Don't ask at the end, ask right up front. And then financials not in order. So most people have, even if you're a new startup, 2-year financials. The one thing that people miss all the time is the projections, right? 2 to 5 year projections. It takes people 2 to 5 weeks to actually get those for some reason, and you're not really striking while the iron's hot, right? If I need to take this to an executive, I want to be able to show where we're breaking even and that we're potentially having this partnership to make money. And this is crazy when people just give up. They give up. Like selling into large enterprises is tough, it's time consuming, and patience is probably the biggest thing that you've got to think about. Don't give up. You're going to have leadership changes. You're going to have people that come and go. You're going to have to basically re-champion yourself to other people in the organization. But don't give up. There's deals that will take a year. There's deals that are going to take a year and a half, but it's going to be up to you to figure out if that's a really good return on your investment or not. So I'm going to turn this back over to Matt real quick, and he's going to talk about a few other kind of pitfalls for us.
Thank you. All right, guys, so let's put our sales/business development hats on for a second, and I have a question for you. So we're going to go over just a couple of things here, and maybe we can have more of a dialogue. So first question, right? How many of you have actively attempted to sell into a large enterprise, like Dell, for instance? Okay, you got one? You got a couple in the back? Great, all right, so I'm gonna look at you guys, okay? How do you score a champion? How's that usually work? And you know what a champion is, you know what I mean by that, a champion within the organization.
Identify the person who your product best pertains to, and then, I mean, like, in that case, I would do the selling up.
I thought you didn't do that.
Huh? But this is a different situation. And just keep on, just honestly meet expectations. Whenever you tell them you're going to do something, just do it. Never, if you have to say that I'm going to do something that might be kind of lame, as long as you keep on meeting expectations, showing them that we are on target, we will take into your feedback. You get a lot of good receptive, or you get they take it more seriously.
Okay, so you get taken more seriously. So I got a question. Okay, whose expectations are you meeting?
Whoever you promise anything to at that point in time.
So who dictates the expectations?
It would typically be me, so that way I show them like, hey, we move fast, we get stuff done. If you say that if you suggest a change and we think it's good, we'll go ahead and we'll take it in and we'll get it out and we'll send you an update on it and we'll see what you think about it the next week.
Okay, cool. Any other thoughts from the rest of the room? Okay, I got another question. All right. Has anyone ever sent an email / proposal to their champion that was like 5 paragraphs long with 3 attachments? Somebody's guilty. I know. Yeah, I have. Okay. So, why do you think it takes so long for those emails to get responded to, or maybe not at all?
Just nobody wants to read and look at 3 attachments.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I love technology. I love startups, right? So if I have like one of those a day to read, I'll read it, right? But how many do you think I get as a business development rep at Dell in a given week?
1,000.
Tons, right? So here's some advice, okay, coming from the guy that reads these emails. Right? You gotta package it in such a way that it's super easy and super beneficial for me to take to the guy above me, right? And then sell it or girl. Okay? Does that make sense? I mean, really, you gotta wrap this thing up like a chocolate cake and just set it on the desk because that's actionable. Does that make sense? And so how do you know how to wrap it up, right? How do you know how to provide value to your champion?
They'll kind of tell you.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's an exercise in articulation, and the fun part about these kinds of workshops, if you will, is that oftentimes these things are super a priori, right? We all know that we have to articulate our value prop if we're gonna have a business, but how often do you actually practice it? Right? How often do you write it on the whiteboard? How often do you get in front of the mirror and practice it? Sales guys got to do the same thing, right? They've always got to have that in their back pocket. It's got to be well rehearsed, well practiced. They have to add value in ways above and beyond just the product that they're offering. So we encourage you guys to think about it. From a champion perspective, it's very easy to just assume that these people have nothing else to do than take your proposal and go sell it somewhere. But I guarantee you they got a ton to do. And what's more, like Blake pointed out earlier, there's different lists, right? Different priorities, different leaders. I mean, in a place like Dell, you guys know how many employees we have globally?
100,000.
About 100,000. So guess how many bosses I potentially have at any given moment? Too many to count, right? So empower your champion as best you can. Try to be simple to the point, and try to understand their world enough so that you can be relevant and provide them a package that's easy for them to sell. Right? What about selling up versus selling around? Now, we already talked about selling up. What's that mean?
Started from the bottom.
So what's the goal of selling up? Pretend I'm a college graduate and I come to you and I say, what does selling up mean?
Your way from somebody that be interested in your product to their boss until you find somebody who can make an executive decision on whether or not they want to include it in their corporate model.
Okay, so it's the path towards the decision maker, right? Would everyone agree with that? Okay, what is a decision maker? Is that even a real thing? Think large enterprise, okay? Not the 3-man shop, but the 100,000 global employees. Is the decision maker an actual thing or is that a myth?
I think it's an actual thing.
Yeah? I think it can be both, right? I also think it's important to realize that oftentimes decision makers in large enterprises, they don't really get into the weeds all that much. They have people for that, right? So in my opinion, in my experience, right? Tell me yours. When I sell up, I try to meet as many people involved in that initial champion as possible so that I can reinforce the message in their group. Does that make sense? Because if they have more people championing together, then it makes more sense for them to continue to sell it and keeps the process moving.
Well, I was gonna say, how many times do you get the request of, I wanna speak with this VP? Or
Dude,
I wanna
all the
go
time.
straight to the, I wanna talk to Michael Dell.
So this is one of the most frustrating things I get, right? I take somebody to lunch, right? I take them to drinks, right? We hang out, I get to know them, we send a dozen emails back and forth, tons of phone calls, right? Eventually they're just like, okay, great. I want to talk to this person, right? Or I want to talk to that person. Can you hook this up? And I'm like, yeah, maybe eventually, but why should I? What's in it for me, right? What's the value proposition? What are you going to tell that person that I connect you with? Because guess what? If I pull in somebody super powerful above me to talk to you and it's not clear, guess what happens? I lose brand, right? I lose value in my own place in the organization. So I would just add that it's important to realize that when you are building those relationships, don't always assume that you have to talk to one person, the guy with the purse strings or the guy at the top of the chain. Oftentimes, those people are delegating more than you think. And so it's just important to build the value proposition, articulate it properly to the ones that you're talking to.
Yeah, something else I think about is the VP example. You've got a vice president that's running a $2.6 billion business, right? And you're pitching a, say, $1 million contract. What's that really return for him, right? If you go a layer below, maybe there's a guy that's running a $20 million business. And that $1 million deal that makes a true impact back to his business is something that he would do. But, for that VP, it's just a blip on the radar. So it's just something to think about when you're looking for those decision makers.
Yes, sir.
To that point, you don't have to answer this specifically for Dell, but organizations have different levels of purchasing power as you go up the chain. Do you have kind of a general idea of how that shakes out?
Just generally in most organizations,
Yeah.
or what my advice would be?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so most of the time you have a strategy guy, right? Hey, I'm looking at the entire business of what, maybe fill in a white space in a product set. Well, that guy also has a technical guy, right? That these two have to agree on. And there's one missing piece, which is the guy who's holding all the money,
Yep.
right? You never see this guy until you actually have to ask for the money. It's so important up front to try to bring these guys together, and it's okay to ask that as, hey, I know we've got Ron and Paul on the phone, but also at the same time, who's the guy who's actually going to have to cut the check? We'd love for him to be in this meeting.
And I would also add to that old school sales trick, right, is don't necessarily try to get into their buying process at the right point, but actually become a part of their buying process as a partner and as a vendor. And it's kind of hard to do if you don't understand what their buying process is. So oftentimes a great initial conversation to have is, tell me about the steps that you have to go through to actually get something like this pushed through. And just learn, right? Because they'll tell you usually. All right. What about selling around? What's that mean? So let's say you run into a bump in the road, right? Selling up becomes a challenge, right? What is another way that you can approach the same client? Selling around is simply utilizing your existing network, right? Other people in the community, perhaps, people that know the client, people that have done business with the client, right? So reach out, try to leverage as much of your network as you can and get new ideas on how to approach the solution positioning. And then one more, right? Be patient. So how long do you think it takes sometimes to actually close a deal with a large corporation or a large enterprise?
Years.
It could take years, it could take weeks, it could take months, you don't know, right? So it's very important to keep that in mind, especially when you first engage, because most startups that I deal with have runways, they have a very clear time to when they have to make some severe next choices, right? And so if you're engaging with a large enterprise, but you haven't looked at what that time frame looks like, or given yourself enough time to really articulate some value and give them time to look at the solution and blah, 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 right? You have to address that early, because being patient is really crucial when you're doing business with large enterprises, in my experience.
So stay visible, right? Even
Yeah.
if it's just a check-in. Like, people fall off the face of the earth sometimes, and it's so frustrating for me because I see what the potential is in that customer, and I see that we're going to do this deal. But guess what? Someone else came in, pitched the deal, stayed on top of it. They hustled harder. They broke down those barriers. And guess what? They're the one that's going to get that deal, not the guy that fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah. And, selling's all about people and relationships, like you mentioned earlier. That stays true. But there's also a lot of noise, right? So you got to be some kind of way to get beyond the noise and stay relevant over time. So like Blake says, sometimes it's just an email, right? Just checking in. So great best practice I saw the other day was 10 minutes a day, just do some networking, right? Get on LinkedIn, send some messages, get on your phone. Blake and I always joke that when we get the impulse to just call somebody we met, it's a good idea to probably just follow that impulse and see what they're up to, right? Even if you can leave a message or send a text. So seems to be working. Yeah. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions or feedback or topics that perhaps we didn't talk about?
Yeah, we had a question from Twitter.
Okay.
So how can a small firm fit into the procurement processes at Dell? So,
Good question. So I think it begins with getting in touch with either myself or Blake Menefee here, and we'll happily chat with them and figure out the best way to go forward. Just generally speaking, Dell's a pretty big beast, right? There's a million different places within Dell that could utilize a solution. And so it's really important to have a champion like someone like Blake or I that can actually navigate the corporation and figure out the best people for you to talk to.
Something else that's relevant to that is look for programs like ours, right? Look for programs that are innovating within an organization or looking for change, because these are the ones that are really easy to get into, right? The sales guys or the sales directors are busy doing their day-to-day. My job is to help companies like yourself, right?
Great point. Good.
I would add that they need to hustle. If they can't get our attention or our interest to begin with, they're not going to stand a chance. So figure out a way to get our attention and our interest. That means knowing what are Dell's priorities, what are we trying to accomplish as a company, how are we different today than we were 6 months ago. Knowing all that stuff, doing all that research, know where we are and our customers are, attending those type of things, so that you're in front of people like Blake and Matt and other people in the organization. You'll get our attention if we can meet face to face. It's going to be hard to get our attention over Twitter. So
yeah, you made a good point also is work in travel to your performance. And by the way, when you work it in, double it. Because if you're going to try and land one of these customers, even if you get their attention on LinkedIn or an email or something like that, and they say, yeah, I'll spend 30 minutes with you, get on a plane, fly to wherever they are, do this face to face, even if it's 30 minutes. It's so important to, basically just try to establish that relationship with them.
Absolutely.
So you had 10 solutions such as around the country?
15 actually.
15, okay. Do you have a map of them?
Yeah, so just get with us later and we'll talk through that and just kind of give you an idea of what this is we've set basically our equipment, Dell equipment, that really is kind of like we said before, is trying to help proof of concept for companies that are looking at investing in large infrastructure, right? So it's hard for a startup, maybe get $1 million in funding, but I need to go run a POC that's a $500,000 hardware POC. Come to us, let us go ahead and run that POC for you, and then validate what you're actually trying to take to market.
Any other questions from Twitter? Okay.
I'd say, guys, if there is something specific that we can help with, even if it's introductions to other customers, things like that, that's what we're here to do. So, when we started the Center for Entrepreneurs, it was here to change the conversation of how we talk to customers. We're surrounded by all this technology every day, all this noise. It's a people-to-people business, right? So, come talk to us after, and happy to chat.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it.